Well, the Carolina Hurricanes got off to an outstanding start, 14-3-1 on the season, and a lot of the critics were wondering, did we get it wrong? But recently, things have not been quite the same for the Canes. In fact, they're 4-6-0 in their past 10. They've been outscored 41-32, and things are a little bit murky with the Canes these days. I've got with me, as always, my good friends and insiders, Erin Manning and Katie Bartlett. And we're going to talk about what's happening in the Canes camp these days. How are you, ladies?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing great.
Doing great. It's great to be back. I've been away for a while, as you know, and it's great to be back here talking hockey with both of you. So, starting it off, I thought we'd kick this discussion off with a big topic these days. What's Rod Brind'Amour up to? He seems like he's changing the lines regularly. Doesn't seem to have anything that seems to be working for him, but boy, it's a bit of a muddle. You want to kick that off, Katie?
Sure. I mean, definitely been a big point of discussion on the social media sites, what's going on with the lines. And you can debate all you want. Are we looking for balanced lines so that you have good defensive pressure on all lines and offensive scoring ability on all lines? Or do you want to create lines that have a little bit more of an identity? That's been my take. I'd love to see a top line that's created for scoring, a second line that is created to support that first line, the normal puck possession dominance of Stahl's line, and then just a gritty, grinding fourth line. That's always been my opinion ever since we started talking back in the preseason about these topics. But regardless of your stance on which particular setup is best suited for the Canes and what the Canes can use, you have to pick one and stick with it. And I think consistency has been the name of the game as far as what the Canes have lacked, because with all of the scrambling of lines, the players aren't able to get into a rhythm with each other and develop that chemistry as a line. And so you're seeing that players are just, and it's just a touch, but just a touch out of position, or their passes are just a touch off, or they're anticipating something and it just isn't quite there. It's just a touch off. And it's creating a lot of the problems that the Canes are facing, that if those players were to get 3, 4, 5 games under their belt, plus all of the associated practices together, I think a lot of those touch off missed plays would start reducing in number and start being eliminated altogether in certain situations.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Well, I agree, and I think that it's interesting because when you look at how most teams are constructed, they do create lines like what Katie was describing. And one of the reasons I think the Canes have been at a disadvantage through this experimental phase is that it makes the line matching so much harder, and it doesn't. It's been especially hard on the road. The road games have been not great. The games that they really should have won, games that they definitely should have had a chance in, and they just were struggling the whole time. So that's not characteristic of the Canes, and I think that that's where, when, Brind'Amour's not controlling the matchups in the road games, you don't have those lines. You don't have, where's my shot suppression line? Where's my scoring line? Where's my gritty grinding line? You don't have them because you have, last night the game started with a fourth line that was William Carrier, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Jack Roslovic. What is that line? You have no rhyme or reason for that line to exist.
No.
So it doesn't matter whether that was, how much time they were going to get or what line, that Rod not numbering his lines. That's not, but why would you put those three players together? And what ended up happening, and I was talking about this a little bit on X earlier, is it just kind of proved the point. That line had the worst Corsi 4 percentage of any of the many lines that played, because, of course, with the injury to Jack Drury that I know we're going to talk about, they ended up scrambling the lines even more than normal because, of course, you were rotating centers in and out on different groupings. But to go from a 33% Corsi 4 with that line, and then the Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, Natchez line had a 75% Corsi 4, and they played almost the exact same number of minutes. So that shows that certain lines just work and certain lines don't. And, you look at this and think, are we overthinking it too much? Are we trying to build these perfect sets of, offense and defense, and everybody can play the same way and everybody can match everybody else? It doesn't seem to work in practice, even though I know that's the theory. It goes back to that idea of positionless hockey that's become very popular out there.
Well, here's a question for some of the folks who might be listening today, is that maybe they don't totally understand what the Corsi rating is. Can you maybe share something on that?
Well, Corsi is it's a puck possession number. It has to do with how many how many shots for your line creates. How many times did your line get a shot on goal versus how many times did the opposition get a shot on goal when your line was on the ice? And because Rod Brind'Amour's team has always been a heavy shot suppression team, you can kind of see how well the lines are working by how much of those shots against are being suppressed. So I think it's been a big focus of the Canes systems to create lines that suppress shots. The problem with that, as we've found out, with some of the offensive lines that have been built over the years, is that when you're trying to generate offense, you're probably not doing as much of that shot suppression work, because you're certainly in the offensive zone. You want to be there as often as possible. But when the play turns the other way, you're usually facing a situation where it's a quick transition and you're trying to stop a goal from being scored, but you're not necessarily going to be stopping those shots from being taken. And that's why you need good goaltending, which is another area we'll get into.
Well, we'll talk about that. Well, it's interesting. We've talked about the shots for and against. The Canes are right up at the top. They're second in both of those. So clearly they're getting the shots off. They're also able to reduce the number of shots on goal. And I think that is, as you say, that is the system of the Canes. That's what Rod likes. And the one thing I've noticed lately, and I don't know if you have, but the Canes style, of course, is to be heavy on the forecheck and to spend a lot of time in the offensive zone. Lately, that has not been the case. And it certainly is kind of perplexing because, the team is built to do that. So not sure why that's struggled. And of course, they're giving up better chances to the opposition and they're scoring on them. So that's how they've been losing during this streak. The Canes stack up beautifully on the power play and penalty kills. So when they're not doing their regular lines, things are working out very well. They're number 2 in the league on both of those. In fact, the Canes are almost at 30% on the power play. This is unbelievable how well they're doing. Yeah. And of course, we know that the magic is coming from 2 players in particular, Marty Necas and, of course, Shane Gostisbehere. Gostisbehere has been all world. Looking at his numbers, he's near the top in really every offensive metric for defensemen in terms of power play points, and so on. And he's just been magic, and it's great to see. But on the 5-on-5 side, it's been, to quote that phrase, Rod Brind'Amour in action. He has really, really played with us a lot. And, you have to wonder, because when the Canes rolled off those initial 14 wins, they had the lineup pretty well set. You had, KK was out there with Robinson and Necas, and that line was very, very strong. And we were all impressed with the work of Eric Robinson as he, got off to a pretty good start for the Canes. And then on the top line, you had Jack Roslovic getting up to 13 goals pretty quickly. So he's a guy that, again, that line with he and Svetch and Aho was very, very effective. William Carrier steps into, Jesper Foss position, and that line did very, very well. Hard to understand why you'd keep playing with these lines and not go back to them. I did see in the game against San Jose for a very short time, Kotkaniemi with Necas and, of course, Eric Robinson, very short time. So you kind of have to wonder. And, you look at a guy like Jack Roslovic, and Roslovic is, I think he's well built to be on the line with Sebastian Aho and Svechnikov. I don't know if he's nearly as effective with anybody else.
Well, part of it, going back to Erin's Corsi real quick, is when you had that second line of KK, Necas, and Robinson, they were the best scoring line 5-on-5, but they also were the worst Corsi line.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of why they got split up is because of Brind'Amour's preference for shot suppression over the shot generation and the scoring, which in my mind, it's about a ratio. It doesn't, if you're giving up 3 goals but you're scoring 12, that's the same as giving up 1 goal and scoring 4. I mean, just because you gave up 2 fewer goals, where you're also scoring 8 fewer goals, you need to come up with that. And so I think that's kind of where the Aho line comes in as well, because Aho is good defensively, and Roslovic has his defense is his Achilles heel. Let's just put it that way. And we have seen that in some of these games recently with these blended lines, where he hasn't had someone like an Aho looking out for him.
Yeah.
And Aho's also a playmaker, so their skill sets matched each other well. Aho likes passing. Aho likes creating scoring opportunities rather than shooting and taking those opportunities for himself.
Right.
Roslovic is a sniper. He finds those soft spots in the ice and takes those opportunities to shoot. And then whether it was Fetch doing the digging of the pucks out of the corner or Jarvis or whatever, that particular skill set also complemented them. And so you're right. I don't think Roslovic really fits well elsewhere, but that's because of how well his offensive and defensive tendencies match with Aho's, both for the positive and to cover up some of the negative. What do you think, Erin?
Yeah.
I think that you're right to a point. The only thing is that we get into that dilemma of we have Svechnikov, we have Roslovic, we have Jarvis, we have Natchez, and then if we want to put Robinson back in the top 6, then suddenly we have too many top 6 wingers. I think ultimately either Robinson or Roslovic will probably be playing a little bit below, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen now, but as far as being really effective with Aho, absolutely. The only thing that's interesting though is that I think even though they haven't played much together, by the expected goal metric, the line of Svechnikov, Aho, and Jarvis was actually a little bit higher, than Roslovic, Aho, and Jarvis. Yeah. So Roslovic was scoring a lot of goals. Nobody was expecting them, apparently. Sorry, just a little bit. But no, they weren't creating, again, they weren't having the same effect on possession. And that is where I think that there's going to have to be those discussions about, okay, do we want to prioritize the whole puck possession and suppression? And I think that they do, because I think that is what Brind'Amour sees as the right way to play. But I think you have to figure out, how do you balance that when a line is really going, because even though they haven't played together, for instance, in, the last 9 games, the line of Robinson, Kotkaniemi, and Natchez is still according to Money Puck, I think, is still the top line in goals for per 60. They were producing more goals per 60 minutes of ice time than anybody else in the NHL. We're not talking just on the Canes. So when you have something that's working like that, I think that's where you have to step back and say, okay, is shot suppression really so important that we have to start moving these people around and putting different people together to see if we can get the same effect without giving up so much at the other end? All of these questions seem to be interconnected, though, because then once again you're right back at goaltending. So it's an interlocking system.
Well, the other thing I was going to mention, absolutely. The other thing I was going to mention, Erin, is there's warts with all the lines, but they were at 14, 3, and 1 using these units, and they may not. Some of the metrics may not have been exactly where you want them to be or whatever, but the reality is they were winning. And they were winning big time. So, I mean, what did they have? 8 or 9 in a row or something. So, I mean, to me, there's a lot of question as to why we're doing this. And in the end, we knew off the start of the season there was going to be some concerns at center ice. For sure, we knew that. We had a special on that. We got into it in great detail. And we knew in particular that the Canes were going to struggle in that 2C. It was going to be a battle between Kotkaniemi and Drury. We felt much more strongly towards Kotkaniemi, and I think as he started the season, that was the case, and it was great. But as time has gone on, Brind'Amour has done as usual, and of course he flip flops Drury into that position, moves Kotkaniemi to the fourth line, and that didn't work so well. Now we've got a new situation, of course, with Jack Drury going out, and one of the challenges the Canes have had, of course, in their center crew has been getting 5-on-5 goals. I mean, they're puny numbers, like 2s and 3s, I mean, hardly scoring anything. In fact, I think Aho at 7, I think, is obviously number one in the center side. But you look at Stahl and Drury and Kotkaniemi are all down in tiny numbers, and you can't. To me, that's not good enough. I mean, you got to get more out of your centers for sure. And so we look at the center ice situation. Erin, what are you thinking about center ice these
Well,
days?
like you said, the injury to Drury is going to be a big factor in what happens going forward. We found out today that they have called up Tyson Jost from the Chicago Wolves.
Yeah.
Some people are a little disappointed that they didn't decide to call up Ryan Suzuki.
I'm very disappointed. I'm sure you are.
I actually have learned to not have that knee-jerk reaction when it comes to prospects, just because I feel like right now Ryan Suzuki is having the season in Chicago that if injuries had not been a factor, he probably would have had last season or even the season before, maybe, because he's always been this player. He's always had this capability, but he's been derailed by injuries so frequently, especially after the original injury to his eye. So he's had a much harder path. And right now he's the 1C in Chicago. He's just below a point per game. He's got his confidence is growing game by game from the reports I've heard and the clips I've seen. I haven't been able to watch a Wolves game, but all of the little bits and pieces that I've seen put together. So you look at that and you say, okay, you're going to pull him up to a team that's going through some kind of malaise. We don't know what it is. And you're going to plug him in at 4C where he's going to get 9 or 10 minutes a game and clearly not be someone that they're relying on to do much. That's not necessarily the best way to shore up the confidence of a young player who hasn't had the opportunities yet. So I can see the rationale behind calling up Jost because he's already knows the system. He's played it. He was fine in the role. There were no issues. He was solid, I think would be a word you would use to describe him. I don't know if they're going to have him playing center. He played wing last time, but he does play center. So we'll see what he's going to do.
Yes.
So, I mean, as much as personally, yes, I would love to see Ryan Suzuki come up and play. He's, I was agitating for that in the off season. But I was thinking if he made the team, that would be great. And since he didn't, and since he's having so much success in Chicago, I think let him keep having that success in Chicago until he really builds. Yeah. Because I think when they call him up, and I say when rather than if, but when they call him up, I think they will be doing it with the sense that he's not going back, that he's not going to go back down. Okay. And whether that's to come up as part of the Black Aces at the end of the year or whether that's some earlier situation due to injury or something, let's make sure that Ryan Suzuki's entry into the NHL is not just a stopgap measure of a few games for someone being out with injury. So I'm kind of there.
Yeah. Katie?
Yeah. Well, as unfortunate as the Drury injury is, I do think it provides more clarity to the Canes center situation because there isn't a should it be this guy, should it be that guy. It is now Aho, KK, Stahl, and I'm assuming Jost, they could put Roslovic there, I guess, but I think that's not.
You did see Roslovic.
4C is not really his skill set. You want him to be in a position to be the sniper, not the play driver. But it is concerning. I mean, you mentioned that Aho leads with goals, but the majority of Aho's goals are power play goals. I think only 2 of his goals are 5-on-5. So
that's exactly
he's in that same boat as far as 5-on-5 scoring is concerned. And, it goes back to the consistency of just being able to drive that play, get those zone entries, find those seam passes. And if you're not playing with the same people regularly, you just can't get on a roll and can't get things clicking. And the centers, especially in Brind'Amour's system with the man-on-man, have to be extra mindful of watching their backs and making sure that they're in a position to defend. And when you have 1 foot back over the blue line, you can't attack at the net. And so it's the reality of the system that Brind'Amour has brought to the team that has brought the team a lot of success. So I don't want to get too down on the system because it's produced many, many years of wonderful hockey, but at the same time the players just they need to be able to drive play more, and that starts with the centers is getting those pucks in and creating transition plays and cycle plays and that sort of thing in order to make the shots more dangerous. The Canes are creating a lot of shots because they're good at getting shots through, but the majority of them are low danger chances.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
And it starts with the centers. The centers have to be the ones to create the plays in order to up the danger level, because we have so many good shooters. If we're able to create more high danger chances, we have the people who can finish on them, at least on those top two lines. We can, we know the finishing problems with the stall line. But that's acceptable for that line, though. I mean, a third line, that's fine to not have that finishing because of all the other things that they are out there to do as far as matchups and that sort of thing. Those top two lines, we have the finishers. We just need to create the opportunities for them to be in those positions where they have a higher likelihood of scoring those goals and not just be shooting from the perimeter.
Absolutely.
Well, the Canes have a couple of things they have to work on. One of them is that, I mean, they're relying on a few people to drive most of the offense right now. I mean, if Marty Natchez goes dry for any period of time, the Canes are going to be in a tough situation. They're not getting. They did see a nice quick bump from Svechnikov, 6 points in 2 games, which was great, but he has not been consistent at all this year, and that's been a problem. I mean, I think the big opportunity right now for me is going to be Jesperi Kotkaniemi. He is going to be in a situation where he can actually, have an opportunity to take a key role for the Canes. Clearly, offensively, they're not going to get much from Jordan Staal, and they're not going to get much from Tyson Jost. So if there's going to be any more contribution at center ice right now, that's got to be Kotkaniemi. And I thought the last couple of games, I was pleased to see some of his effort. He was starting to show a little bit more life. He went through that period again where he was really almost non-existent on the ice. And so now he's starting to show a little bit more life. And I think he's a guy the Canes are going to need to come through. For sure. I mean, they have no other real options, right?
At the moment, no, unless they're planning to make some big trade, but it's mid-season and they don't usually do that. So, no. I think they're not going to do that. I think this is an opportunity for Kotkaniemi, but it's also an opportunity, if you want to look at it this way, for Rod Brind'Amour to step back and stop the pattern of demoting Kotkaniemi whenever he has a significantly bad game. Because you're going to have, when your players are 23, 24 years old, he's 24, Svech is 24, Jack Drury is 24, they've all had their bad games, And maybe it's not like, I'm not trying to say that they're all on that equal level by any means, but I really feel like when you have a player who struggles with his confidence, and we've seen that happen last season, it becomes counterproductive to have that demotion be the first thing you go to, and then to have it last so long. Yes. That was my biggest complaint, and one of the reasons why I wasn't sure what was going on with Kotkaniemi or what they were thinking, because I thought, yes, he had a very bad game against Columbus. He was demoted during that game, which was absolutely appropriate. They kept him. If they'd kept him down on the fourth line for a couple of games after that, I would have been sitting there saying, absolutely, reinforce the message, give him some time to spend more time watching from the bench. But yesterday was game 9, I think. And even as he was improving, and even as he was contributing, and even as he was scoring, and he ended up having the same number of points that Drury was having with 4 more minutes a game, it's like, at what point do you, if you really see this person as being someone who's going to be at least a middle 6 center on your team for the future, at what point do you say, okay, there's no reason to keep playing him 10 minutes a night? Because that's never been, anybody's way of getting out of a funk. That's never been anybody's way of improving to play 10 minutes a night if that's not your usual role,
Well, it also hits on something we've talked about in terms of this minute thing, and that's Jackson Blake. I'm very concerned about the low minute numbers he's getting these days. He does play a little bit on the second power play, but, that fourth line, and in particular, his role has been really diminished. And for a young player who's, just kind of first year pro and so on, he's got off to a great start, and that's fine. And he's done a lot of his scoring on the power play, as we've discussed. I'm concerned about that. And, a lot of folks are really crazy about Jackson Blake, and that's fine. But on my view, I think this is a bit of a disservice for him. I think he should be playing big minutes. I think he should be in all situations where he can grow his game as he should. This to me is not the ideal situation for Jackson Blake.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what we've seen with the line scrambling is that he was put up on the second line at least once or maybe twice that I know of, and then during games he would be put up there and bumped up there. But even with all that, you're right when you say that his ice time has been over the last 9 games. At least 8 of the last 9, Jackson Blake's ice time was either the second lowest or the lowest, one or the other. He was trading off with William Carrier quite a bit. So he's not being played enough minutes, and that is something that is concerning for, like you said, for a young player, because development in the NHL is all about puck touches and time on ice. If you're not getting it, then you should be at whatever level that you're going to be getting it. So I kind of agree with you there. I think they're going to have to come to a decision point that they're either going to have to play him more, or they're going to have to let him go back to Chicago and have some time there and have a really big role there. The issue is, if you want to play him more, where does he go?
He's got to go to Chicago.
I mean, if you wanted to play him more on the Canes, that's the problem. Is that where does he go? Yeah.
There's no real place for him. No,
because he's not going to be in the top 6.
I don't see it.
I mean, you could play him.
No, and he's definitely not going to be on. I don't see him on Stahl's line. So you're right. There's no real opportunity for him on the Hurricanes to move up in the lineup, and that's concerning. What do you think, Katie? A lot.
So, it goes back to the idea of consistency, though, right? And it's doubly important for someone who is a rookie, who's new. They need consistency more than anybody else on that team. So I still think he could be successful in a 4th-line role. You go back again to the first chunk of the season when all 4 lines were doing well with their role. He was still 4th line. He and Drury had really good chemistry with each other. And with the 10 to 12 minutes that they were getting per night, whether who was, I guess it was Carrier, Carrier who was down there with them, or I guess they started Carrier. Robinson, then they popped Robinson up and had Carrier down there. That trio really was very successful, and they had consistent time working together. And so even without a ton of minutes, he knew his role, he knew his purpose. He got to know Drury, he got to know Carrier. They were developing good communication and habits together. So Jackson Blake is just as much a victim of the line scrambling as anybody else on that team, if not more so because of his youth. So I think he's fine on the 4th line. But just like the other lines, he needs a consistent 4th line. So with Jost coming up, if Jost, as expected, is going to be the one who centers that line, hopefully whoever else they put there, I imagine Carrier again makes the most sense. Hopefully, whether it's 9 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever time they get, and that's dictated by game situation and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I just hope they stick with it, because I think Blake's game will stabilize as soon as his line mates stabilize.
Well, of course, he's going to be without Drury, so that connection is gone. And I was hopeful for Tyson Jost in the offseason, but from what I've seen so far, in the brief periods he's been with the Hurricanes, he's kind of a fringe player to me. And I don't see him as being a guy that's going to drive much in terms of offense and generally on the ice. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Maybe at center he's going to be better than he was on the wing, but we'll see for sure. Now, you mentioned something earlier, I think, too, Erin, and that's the goaltending situation. So, the Hurricanes are near the bottom of the league in save percentage. This is hard to believe, but they are. As a team, I think they're in the bottom 3 or 4. Not a good situation for the Canes. Pyotr Kochetkov has been given the keys. Unfortunately, with Freddie going out, Spencer Martin had an opportunity to jump in and really take a nice role supporting Pyotr, but he struggled badly, as we know. He's now moved on. We have Dustin Tokarski in. Tokarski has been a beast in the American Hockey League, but he hasn't played all that much in the NHL, and certainly has not proven that he could be a significant asset in terms of goaltending. He can do the odd game, I'm sure, but when you take a look at the load that's coming up with Freddie out for an extended period and the struggles that Piotr has had, particularly letting in some of these soft goals, what do we think the situation looks like for the Canes goaltending-wise going forward? What do you think, Erin?
Well, I don't know if you saw this today, but there's an interesting little note that may or may not have anything to do with any of this, but Yannick Peretz has been assigned to the ECHL team as of today.
Okay.
He's been assigned to, it's the Bridgeport Bisons? Wait, Bloomington?
Yeah,
Bloomington?
Sorry. Bloomington.
Yeah, the Bison,
I don't know all the ACHL teams yet. I'm working on it, guys. But
yeah,
Bloomington Bison. But yeah.
Yes.
So my first thought when I saw that was, and somebody else had pointed it out as, well, this is interesting. I was like, why is it interesting? It's just an ECHL signing, shuffling. And then I thought, well, okay, but hypothetically, if the Canes wanted to do something involving goaltending, whether or not they put Freddie on IR or whatever, LTI or whatever,
LTI.
if they wanted to do something, they would have to free up a little space in Chicago because they would have to send Tokarski down. So right now you have Kazayev and Martin in Chicago. You did have Kazayev, Martin, and Peretz. You don't have Peretz there, so you potentially have a space. And then, if the pieces were to get shuffled around, this is just, it's interesting because it's possible. Now, I'm fairly sure the main reason they sent him down was so that he would get playing time. But
I think there's two reasons. There's two reasons. You're right. He's going to get more playing time. He's kind of being limited. And Ruslan Kazeev, I think, is starting to come on quite nicely, according to what I'm hearing from Nick Bass and others. He's starting to get his game rounded out. And frankly, they couldn't run with three goaltenders, so they had to make a decision which one they were going to send back. And I think Kazeev is a guy they have much higher thoughts in terms of potential on for sure. So maybe they want him in that AHL situation, working with Cam Abbott and of course with Spencer Martin. The question you brought up is kind of the right question, which is if the Canes are going to roll for a couple more months with Pyotr Kochetkov and Martin or Tokarski, is that good enough?
Sure, they can make do. Because, you look at some of the save percentage numbers and that sort of thing, especially for Kochetkov, and while it's not great, he has still won 75% of his starts. So that's making do. I think if you said that he was going to win 75% of his remaining starts the rest of the season, we would take that. But with the concern about workload and keeping him healthy, you want somebody more reliable than Martin or Tokarski to be there to take some of that workload off of him and trust that they can hold down the fort when he's getting a break.
One of the things that I think that people don't understand sometimes or don't think about is that goaltending really affects all these other areas that the Canes have been struggling with. They've given up a lot of rush chances. They've given up a lot of transition plays where they've let the opponents get by them. But all of that, I think all of that starts with the mindset that we have to score 4. We have to have a certain number of goals on the board so that we've created this protective cushion for our goaltender. During the last couple of seasons of Carey Price's career, during the regular season, he would have games like that where he just wouldn't be sharp, and he was battling so many injuries by that point in his career. Everybody was aware that was what was going on, But you would see the Habs of that time period have those same kinds of just really aggressive pushes offensively that would oftentimes turn bad. And I think it was the mindset of we have to create run support for our goaltender because our goaltender isn't having a good game. I think that gets into players' minds and it makes them more aggressive, offensively, and they start you start seeing the D's doing these crazy pinches where they're clear up past the goal line, and nobody's back,
Exactly.
and it's just everyone wants to get into that safety zone where, okay, we've scored enough, now we can sit back and defend so our goaltender doesn't have to be overworked for the rest of this game. And I think there's been at least a couple games where I've watched the Canes and seen that same kind of mentality going on, that we must be as aggressive as possible, get as much going as possible, and score as much as possible. And then, after a game like that goes badly, then you have the opposite effect. How many times have we, after the first period, we've heard, Trip Tracy and Mike Maniscalco saying they should have had 5 in that period, because of all the chances. But they're actually being more conservative because the previous game didn't go so well when they tried to do that. So I think it affects so much. It affects their ability to score. It affects their ability to play team defense properly. And it just, Katie, because you've been watching this with the Avs.
It is the other thing I want to point out that I think is a bit of a conundrum as far as the Canes are concerned when it comes to Kochetkov is I think Kochetkov is a goalie who plays better the more he is feeling the game. And it's hard to feel the game when there is a lot of shot suppression, because you'll see a lot of the games where he gives up 3 goals and there's only 19 shots against. And a lot of times those shots against, there's minutes between shots during those games. And I think he gets cold in the net. And you think back to some of those spectacular games that he had last season, and a lot of those games that he had that were spectacular, he faced over 30 shots in those games.
He was getting lots
plays
of shots.
so much better when he is getting a certain amount of shots across. And so I just wonder if there aren't some tweaks where you don't want to give up a lot of high danger chances, but his stats are the best. They're the top 5 in the league for high danger chances, as far as his save percentage and his rebound
he makes
control,
incredible
that sort
saves.
of thing.
Yes.
But it's the mid danger chances that get him. He's really solid on the low ones too. When you look at the numbers, it's the mid danger chances that are getting to him, and a lot of that has to do with just not getting those touches and not feeling the game. So I just wonder if there is a way to just tweak things a little bit in order to let Kochetkov kind of get into a flow, into a feel of the game. And I think his play will improve, especially because he's had fits and starts, with the injury. A couple times he's been out for injury and that sort of thing.
No, I think you're onto something, because, one of the things I've noticed with Piotr, for sure, he'll make incredible saves. How many breakaways? The Canes have been giving up a lot of breakaways and odd man rushes, and he's made these circus saves, and it's really something. And then he'll let in an easy one, and you're kind of thinking, what's going on here? Because the tough ones he's saving, and the other ones he's struggling with. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of different reasons behind this. Clearly, Piotr has shown in the past he can do it. There's no question he's got the capability, and he's going to be the one they rely on. He has a good winning record this year. The numbers, kind of win-loss numbers, are excellent. It's just a save percentage at this stage, and I think it's part of what you're saying. He's the play is inconsistent, and as you say, he probably gets cold. He's looking around. Maybe he loses focus. Who knows what it is? But in any case, they're going to count on Piotr for sure. And as long as he stays in the crease and doesn't do the crazy things he does, which we see so frequently, he should be fine. In any case, that's the goaltending situation. Again, to summarize, I don't think there's any deals forthcoming in the near future. Of course, that could change tomorrow, but I think they're going to run with Piotr, and he's going to see a lot of ice from here on in. I didn't look at the schedule, so I'm not sure how many back-to-backs they have, but clearly they're going to count on Piotr to play as much as he can. Okay. One last thing I wanted to touch on with the player side is, of course, the defense core. A lot of criticism these days about the D core. Some folks are all over Brent Burns. They feel like he's starting to feel his age a little bit, struggling a little bit in his own zone these days. And of course, we've got the challenges with the third pair of the Canes, Shane Gostisbehere and Sean Walker. Sitting at -6, I think, each right now, so a -12 collective. Not good numbers for them, for sure. And on the other hand, you've got Orlov and Chatfield, who I think throughout the season have been very consistent and have played excellent hockey for the Hurricanes. So what are we thinking about the current defensive core? Katie, you want to take a shot at that one?
Oh, I know there's some different concern, but as far as my opinion goes, I think just let them play through it. No need to stir the pot to make things crazy. Even with the recent struggles, the third pair of Gostisbehere and Walker still has the best possession numbers in the league for a third pair. In fact, one of my favorite Avs podcasters called them those freaks over in Carolina. So when the third pairs are impressing pundits from other teams, and you still got something pretty good going on. Is it as elite as they started the season off with? No. But again, what's going on with the forwards, and the forwards still kind of missing each other a little bit with their play, and not having some of those soft goals going in behind them. That's going to trickle over a little bit into the defense. But as far as I'm concerned, keep it together. Don't mess with it. Don't make things worse, because there's a whole lot more potential to make things worse if you tinker with the defensive pairs than if you just leave them alone. If there was one change that I would make, is I think that Burns overall has been pretty good. He could use a little more on the offense, but he has led the team in ice time in quite a few different games, at least as far as the D-core. He just finds some ways to manage his minutes. Don't take him off that top line. Don't hinder him from being who he is and playing his game. But it would be good if you can just kind of shave a minute and a half, 2 minutes off of his ice time in order to preserve him. Because if the Canes are going to go far in the postseason, we need that top duo of Slavin and Burns to be at their absolute best come playoff time. So, but yeah, other than that, don't change anything. Don't tinker with it. Don't mess with it. Let it work.
Okay. Well, actually, you're onto something we've discussed before, and it's something we'll continue to discuss, I'm sure. I think Sean Walker should play more. I think you recall he was his most effective play so far in the NHL was with the Flyers, and he was averaging close to 20 minutes or just over 20 minutes a game, and playing in all situations. And we've talked about his acumen on PK many times. I think there's an easy decision here, which we talked about last podcast, which I want to keep bringing up because I think it's the right one, is he should be the guy that joins Slavin on the PK, and Burns should sit that one out. And I think it would help in a number of ways. It would certainly help Burns because, reduces his playing time 2 or 3 minutes a game. And clearly, Walker, it gives him more ice. And I think he needs that. I think he's a guy that thrives with more playing time. And sure, he's doing fine on that third pair and so on. But I think he can do better. And if he really gets his game in top form, and Gostisbehere is an elite offensive defenseman, there's no question. If you've got both of those guys playing the way they can play, I think that's going to help the Canes a lot for sure. So now, I guess we've kind of touched upon most of the key challenges with the Hurricanes. We know that they're going to struggle at center ice. We've talked about trying to do deals for a long time, and hard to figure out where to go with that. Of course, the big rumor this week that there might be an opportunity with the big centerman over in Detroit. But that didn't open up for Dylan Larkin. Somebody, of course, saying that he was wanting to be traded, and we thought, boy, Dylan Larkin would be just the right player for the
Yeah.
Just somebody stirring
Hurricanes.
up trouble with
So,
fake rumors.
yep,
Yeah,
stirring the pot.
unfortunately, that wasn't going to happen. But we knew that Eric Tulsky and Tom Dundon would have been right in the mix on that one because they go after every big fish there is. Um, there's definitely going to be some challenges at center, and we'll see how that plays out. We might even see Jack Roslovic in there. We talked a little bit about that. He did pop into center the other night. He's done that. Of course, he played several seasons with Columbus at center ice, so he can do it. And we'll see how that plays out. And of course, the goaltending. If any injuries happen, we're going to see some movement there for sure. So definitely an interesting time. And we'll have to follow it closely. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about, which is around another team, which is Katie, one of your teams, which is the Avalanche, was the big deal this week. The Avs making that deal to bring in Mackenzie Blackwood. I thought it was they paid a price for Blackwood. They gave a guy that you've talked about before, Nikolai Kovalenko, of course, who went over to San Jose. Along with Alexander Georgiev and a second-round pick and I think a fifth-round pick. So they did pay something to get Mackenzie Blackwood. How do you feel about that deal?
I'm feeling really good.
And it's I guess Katie's not so
Oh
excited.
dear.
The on the ice thing is great.
Maybe, it was an opportunity for her to talk a little bit about that. There she is. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Are we back?
But I heard you. But I'm very excited for this opportunity. It has more to do with the off ice stuff than it does the on ice stuff. The on ice will be great. The Avs have proven that they are a very good team with just average goaltending, but there was a lot of just lack of spirit, I think, that was happening, just discouragement that was happening. And these guys are upbeat, good locker room guys, good attitude, good mantra. And so I think that the Avs are a team to be reckoned with again, now that they just have some stability on that back end. See where they go from here.
Well, for sure, and I thought it was interesting to see that. They just picked up Scott Wedgwood, of course, from Nashville, and then turn it right around and get Mackenzie Blackwood. So kudos to them and their management team for getting out and getting things done. And I hope Eric Tulsky is watching some of this because I think both of those goaltenders would have been nice additions to the Hurricanes for sure. Despite all the things
Wedgwood's been good, but they're
having gone 4-6.
I was just saying Wedgwood has been good, but the one time he faltered was against the Canes. The Canes are the only team so far that has figured out Wedgwood while he's played for the Avs.
Okay, that's interesting. In any case, I was just going to mention that, we talk about the Hurricanes' challenges. They've gone 4-6 in their last 10, but boy, they sit number 2 in wins in the National Hockey League right now. So they are, the Capitals. The Capitals have been playing very, very well, as we all know. A bit of a surprise that they're still doing that, but they're doing an outstanding job. And even with Alex Ovechkin out there continuing to win. So they've been doing it. They've got 19 wins. The Canes are right behind them. And, again, the Canes are looking good in several different areas when you look at the metrics. So even with the slump, they are still holding themselves in a pretty good situation in the league. And I think they'll come out of it. They've won 2 of their last 3. They're starting to find their way. Although the San Jose game was a bit of a sleeper to start, they did turn it on in the third period and get the win. So maybe they're going to start to pop out of this little slump. And if that's the case, the next discussion we have will probably be about some positive things that are going on with the Hurricanes as they continue to press hard in this Eastern Conference. In any case, any closing thoughts today? Erin, what have you got?
Well, just what you're saying there. I think one of the things that can happen in a long season, I was actually comparing this on X to an experience I had once of going to see somebody, rather famous in a play, but the play was a matinee performance in a small town in Ohio. And, they didn't bring it. They just didn't, because it didn't mean anything to them at that point in their career to put on the performance. I think that the season is like that for the teams a lot. We see the Jets have fallen off. A lot of teams have fallen off. The Rangers we could talk about all day. But a lot of teams have gone through that winter blah kind of thing, where things just settle down. And as ironic as it is, and you don't want this to be the way that it is at all, but going through some adversity together, which they're going to go through now that they've lost Jack Drury for the time being, that kind of thing can actually bring a team back to their senses a little bit and say, okay, we have to win so that we'll be in a good position when our teammate and, companion and brother comes back, that he's not, looking at, oh, what happened while I was gone. I've seen that happen before with teams when a player that is well liked and a big part of the room goes out with an injury, and the team kind of rallies around. And so that mindset is, we've seen that in all kinds of walks of life. So I think that this is an opportunity for all of the Canes to say, okay, now we're in a situation where we've lost somebody who's been in our roster since day one. Let's see what we can do to get things back on track and right the ship before, we go too much further down this road. So it'd be interesting to see.
Katie?
I'm right there with Erin. I'm concerned, just in the sense that they've kind of seemed to stumble, but they're still moving forward. They're not going in the wrong direction. They're still getting some wins. They're still up there in the standings. They're still producing goals. They're still doing well on the power play. So as long as can stabilize and keep things moving in the right direction, they'll find their feet. They'll get their skates under them again, and start to tighten up a few of those details. And I think we'll be right back to where we were at the beginning of the season. Mm-hmm. They'll get humming along in no time.
Agreed.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think, when you look at the specialty teams, for sure, they've been outstanding. I mean, the power play has been smoking hot, and the PK as well. And both of them moved into number 2 position in the league. That's quite a story. And I think there's no reason for both of those groups to decline. I think they're both doing it well. And boy, that power play is wonderful to watch. They are really magic. And I think those of us who've watched the Canes for years, it's kind of nice to see a power play that works like that. For sure. In any case, ladies, it's been great to talk hockey. It's fun to talk about the Hurricanes. Sometimes we're talking about great positive things. This one, some concerns, but still feeling pretty good about the Canes this year. And I'm hopeful at the end of the year that those critics that started the year suggesting the Canes may end up out of the playoffs are certainly not going very far. We'll have to eat some crow. So we'll see how that goes for sure. In any case, for those of you who've been listening or watching, as always, thanks so much for joining us here. If you have any comments, please leave those down below, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. And of course, if you like this episode, please hit the like button. And if you want to find out about future episodes, please subscribe and hit the bell. And of course, we'll keep you up to date on everything that's going on with the Canes. As always, thanks so much for joining us right here on Storm Tracker, and we'll catch up real soon.